Hello, and welcome back to the Intelligentleman podcast. I am your host, Milt Walker, and I want to first of all thank each and every one of you who watches and listens to this for your support, and I appreciate you all. And that's why I do it. I do it so that others can get value from the things that I've learned and the things that I share, and it's just one of those parts of my life that helps me to be my higher self. And so I really appreciate you all. Thank you so much. And this is the fourth episode in the Spiritual Evolution series. And it's the culmination. It's the end of the series, not the journey, right? Because we are forever on that journey. But it's raised a lot of thoughts in my mind, and it's the vibrations around it have become very high, and a lot of fellow thinkers and supporters have reached out, and I'm looking forward to working with everyone, pushing out more messages of peace, positivity, and love, because that's what it's all about. Yeah. So first, I just want to recap what the rest of the series was all about, so that people who may be just listening in for this particular episode can, catch up, right? So we talked about on the first episode the victim mindset, the victim consciousness that we sometimes find ourselves in, where we're allowing ourselves to give our power over to other things through low vibrational emotions and feelings, and like fear, depression, desperation, so on and so forth. These things keep us vibrating at a very low frequency, and when we do that, we're giving up our power. And one of the examples I've always used to illustrate my understanding about life was, no matter what happens, you always have a choice. You always have a choice. So the important part about that is, if you believe that life is progressive, and that you're living and you're learning and you're becoming better, that's important. It's very important that you understand that every moment is a choice. And it's a choice of a few things, right? You can't choose certain external things happening, but you can always choose how you feel, and you can always choose your actions and thoughts that lead you on your path. So that is something that is directly in your control. So you always have a choice when it comes to that. Even the way you respond to those things, you have a choice. If it's something that takes you back towards being a victim in your mindset, then that it's probably something that you need to let go, right? Because you don't want to have something that keeps you from reaching your fullest potential within yourself, right? And then again, it may just need a shift in your perception, a shift in your mindset, where you look at it differently, and therefore it has no more power. And being into IT myself, and learning about physics and these different things, science and so on and so forth, you understand that when it comes to physics, one of the key elements to this is that things can be on, off, or on and off at the same time, meaning it can be both positions that it can be at the same time, right? So what that means is that just because something is happening, it doesn't mean that it has to make you feel a certain way, right? It's about your perception. So when you choose, and it takes practice, because over time we've actually made ourselves more used to giving that power away versus keeping it for ourselves. You can choose how you want to feel about something, right? And that doesn't mean you might not feel sadness when you see something that makes you sad. It just means that it's not gonna make you withdraw and maybe snap on people, or whatever the case may be, or whatever, anything that may happen in that realm is not gonna make you respond in that way, right? So that's key. That's a key point. So victim consciousness, that was the first one. The next one was manifestor consciousness, state of manifesting consciousness, right? And that is something that we hear a lot about today. There's a lot of spiritual teachers that are out there that are talking about this, about how our thoughts and directly what we focus on and put our energy into is what we manifest, right? So knowing that is something that is part of the way that the universe works, knowing that it's part of the laws of the universe, it's up to us to understand it and to implement it. Because it's one thing to have knowledge, it's another to apply it, right? That's when it turns into wisdom, right? So it's one thing to know something, but then it's another thing entirely to apply it to the situations in your life in a way that is going to bring about positive change, right? Which that positive change would mean elevation, your elevation, because that's the ultimate goal. And again, so let me talk about this a little bit, because it's gonna tie into what this fourth level that we're talking about, that we're going to be talking about today, is all about. The focus is always, and should always be, your personal elevation to your higher self. That should always be your focus, always. Sometimes, people try to draw that into a negative light because they use words like, oh, you're being selfish, or you're this and that and the third, when really it's not. Because if you become your highest self, then who benefits from that? Not just you, but everybody. Everybody benefits from a person becoming their higher self. So let's be optimistic, and let's be a dreamer for a second. Let's vision something out. If everybody became their higher selves, would there be a need for police? Would there need to be a need for laws? Because no one will feel a need to take advantage of other people. So if you become your higher self, then therefore you don't have the need to be managed. That's a key point. So that's something that you need to think about. So remember this: your higher self is tied directly to life, to the higher presence, which is all good things. And being that it's tied to that, right, then that too is what it is. That's what the quality of it is. So if that's your quality, your natural quality, then that's where you're headed. That's honestly, that should always be your goal, to be the best person that you are. So through this manifesting stage, through the state of being able to manifest, you learn how all of these things kind of tie in together to paint this grand picture of you evolving into something greater, yourself, into your greater self. Good evening, Ebony. Thank you for joining. Appreciate you so much for all your support. It's always great to see you. You know, you have to pay attention to the artistry of creation, because it's an amazing thing. Like, when you really stop and you pay attention to how much good is available at any given time, you can never in your life say that there's more bad than good, ever. You can never say that. There is always more good than bad. And the reason for that is because it's progressive through these laws. So once you learn these laws and you learn how you're manifesting things into your life, right, then you become aware that the universe is naturally good. Everything is naturally good. Like, everything always inclines towards what is right, just, and good. So knowing this, it brings a sense of peace and calmness to you, and then it brings a sense of security to you. And so you become aware of this greater presence that now you understand, or you start to understand, that it is also a part of you. And so as you understand that, that is where your consciousness starts to churn and go into its next stage of unfolding, which is what we talked about in episode 3. Episode 2, we talked about manifesting consciousness. Episode 3, we talked about the channel state of consciousness. So once you start to understand, and your body start, and this could be years. This could literally be years. So even though the timeline that we're talking about seems like it's very short, it's not a linear timeline. So there is no set path. There is no set time period for any one of these levels of consciousness to be. Okay, so it just happens when it happens, and it happens through your conscious work with it. So as you become aware of this, and you become aware, if this is good, and I am creation, and I am here, I'm alive, I'm part of life, I'm manifesting, I have this ability, then that means that I am a part of this grand architecture. I'm part of this. I am literally part of this. So then you go from being a victim, which is life happens to me, to a manifester, which is life happens by me, right? Then you go to the next stage, which is life happens through me. Life happens through me, right? So now that you start to understand that, you're saying, wow, so this is a part of, right, for me. You're right, Ebony. Thank you for that. Yeah, so step 2 is for me, right? So the manifester is for me, right? So I'm making this happen, right? Step 1 is happening to me. Step 2, I'm making it happen. Step 3 is it's happening through me. It's happening through me. And you start to realize that really, I can take my hands off, because it's going to happen through me. It's going to happen through me. So that's which we introduced the concept of surrender, right? When you surrender to that, to that greater purpose, to that greater realization that life is happening through me, and it's always going to be more than I can imagine. But being that I am a part of that, then I am inside of that plan. So as it flows, as it starts to flow, right? And Ebony says, yes, that's right. It's so amazing what a change in perspective can do for you on all levels. Absolutely. Absolutely. It literally changes the world. Literally. There's so many different stories in history, and I encourage you, I challenge you to go read about stories of people who were once thinking one way, and then once they changed their mind, they were able to affect the entire world. It happens all the time. This is not, it's not a fluke. It's not something that it's luck, but it's not the type of luck that people are used to, right? We're talking about living under cosmic knowledge. When you're living under cosmic knowledge, then everything seems like what people like to call luck, and so it manifests itself in that way where, people are like, oh, that it was just luck. He won't do that again. And then it happens again, and it's like, oh, okay, well, maybe they got it twice, but it ain't gonna be no 3 times. And then they might do it again. It's like, wow, okay, something's going on. And that's when they, sometimes that's when they want to ask you, is they, oh, what are you doing? So that and that's a whole different topic. We're not going to get into that right now. But yes, so 3, life is happening through me. That was our last episode. Life is happening through me. So then you start to understand, like, wow, I could just let the divine architect do what he does, do what she does, do what it does, right? Because we know it's formless. We know that if it's something that we can conceive, it's not what it is, because it's far beyond our comprehension. So how could we ever define it, right? So when you understand that, then you understand, okay, well, I'll let you decide, right? But there's still a little bit, it's not as much as when you're on the first stage of separation. But there's still a little bit, it's very subtle. It's a very subtle separation that you're still causing between you and the source, right? So that's what we're going to be talking about today. When you have seen that fine line, and then you are able to overcome the illusion of it, and then you understand that it is all one. When you understand about the connectedness and the oneness of it all, that's when you move to that next stage after being a channel, right? But before we get into that, I'm going to talk about a few things because it puts some things into perspective, right? So actually it's 8 things. And the spiritual teacher that I'm learning these things from, he calls them the 8 life structures. They're the 8 life structures. And I encourage you, and I'll tell you his name at the end of this podcast so that you can go and look him up and go to his workshops and go to his church. It's out there in California, but you can actually watch the virtual and stuff like that. Because it's very powerful, and there's a lot more information and a lot more insight that you can draw than just from what I have drawn from it, right? Because when you're drawing from an infinite well, no one's ever going to reach the end, so no one can ever have a claim on it all and say, well, I know where it all is. No, you don't. you know where that part is, but you didn't see, you just saw the tip of the iceberg. You didn't see the entire thing because you cannot, you don't have the ability to do that. It doesn't. And that was another thing we talked about in episode 3, knowing that this happens through you makes you aware that you're not actually making it happen. Like not your physical being is not making anything happen. That's not what's making things happen, okay? Because that's not the true substance, right? That's not who you truly are. So that's not where your true power lies. But anyway, I'm not going to get too far. And then, like I said, I'm going to give you all that information at the end of the podcast, so you can go and you can search for this teacher yourself, and you can, find out for yourself a lot of these things that I've been talking about. But yes, he calls them the 8 life structures. And the first structure that he talks about, and we're going to talk about them very briefly, not a whole lot, because they're 8, and I don't want to keep you guys too long this time. I think we went over a little bit last time, so we're going to try to keep it down to the normal for this one. So the first one is spiritual, the spiritual life structure, right? He encourages you to get your spiritual life structure organized, in order, right? And how do you do that? You do that by learning. You do that by practicing, right? You do that by putting yourself into the, quote unquote, imaginary fire, and letting it take away all of, the things that are not, needed, So spiritual is the first one, right? And however it is, whatever spiritual path you choose to take, they all lead to the same place, because by the very definition of us all being here, it can't come from a different place. I mean, that's just impossible. Now, people can disagree about where that place is, or who that, or where it comes from, but you all have to agree that it all comes from one place. And that's even bigger realization, because once you understand that, then you understand that, we can have differences in opinions, but we can't have a difference in where we come from, right? So then you start to understand that it's all one, right? Again, going into that next state. So that's the spiritual. And then you have the ego. Knowing what the function of the ego is, knowing how to tell whether or not you're in your your lower vibration ego or your higher vibration ego. And the way that was explained to me was this: the ego itself is not good or evil, right? It's when you use the ego too much, because it is a function of your lower vibration, meaning it's there to protect you from some things, right? But when you rely on that too much, then your vibration lowers as well, because it keeps you from raising above the fear, suspicion, and pride, those types of things, that can be impediment to your spiritual development and evolution, right? So ego is the second life structure that you work on. The third one is relationships, right? So it's and that's a very powerful thing. It's one thing that a lot of people they don't really think about. A lot of times we just think that our relationships are relational, in that it relates directly to who we're with, but it doesn't. It's all about you. Remember, your primary focus is always your elevation, always. Everything else falls in line from there. You don't have to worry about the rest of it. The only thing that you have control over is the only thing that you really should be worried about. That's, when it comes to it, not even worried, but that's the only thing that you should be focusing on, right? So that's how you want to do that. So that's number 3, relationships. In relation to another person, relationships in relation to another person. In relation to another person is directly your relationship with yourself. So being that it's the relationship with yourself, how you feel about yourself is going to be your relationship with others. If you are down on yourself, a lot of times it leaves room for people to manipulate you in some way, shape, or form, because you are not holding yourself to your full power. You're not holding yourself to make the decisions based off of how you feel in your spiritual evolution. You're basing it off of how somebody else either makes you feel or tries to make you feel, or whatever the case may be. So those are things, and again, these are, as he says it, you can be masterful in one area, but then not masterful in another area. So don't get too bogged down by thinking that, I'm good in this area, so I must be good. No, you may be good in this area, but you may not be as good in this area. So you have to pay attention, and these life structures actually helps you do that, because it breaks them down into some organized areas that you can focus on, right? So you got relationships, right? And really taking a gauge in your relationships and saying, what type of relationship is this? A true relationship, meaning, does this person know me for who I am and who I am becoming, not for what they want me to be and their vision of me? You see, that's how you look at that. Okay, so the body temple is number 4. Your body is your temple. When you understand that life is channeling through you, it makes you look at your body different, because you know that it's sacred. That's why it's sacred, right? Because it's flowing through you. This is just your body, right? It's your physical body, but it's sacred because it encases that which is eternal, right? That spark, that piece of the divine that was placed into us, life that was placed into us, right? To be able to interact with this physical plane. So when you know that, when you understand that, then you look at your body different, and you start doing things different with your body. You know, more natural. It's more natural. You know, you don't want to do things that are unnatural to your physical makeup, right? So you start to learn. You might start to learn about plant medicines and, you know, herbal, you know, supplements and all these kind of things that, you know, naturally help your body be the best that it can be, right? Because you can do that, you know, you can literally do that. But with the understanding that, and I always tell people this, you know, even when it comes to, you know, medicines and all that kind of stuff, a lot of times it's treating the symptoms, and by treating the symptoms, it allows the body to heal itself. So you always have to understand that, but understand that it's all the time, it's the body that is healing itself. It is not the medicine, quote unquote, that's healing itself, right? That's healing you, rather. So the body temple, you know, it becomes very important for you to do that, right? So livelihood, okay, that's the 5th one, but that's the 5th. But the 6th is financial, and the reason he says that he separated those two was because a lot of people think that, you know, you have to, you know, when you do what you love, you might become wealthy doing that. That's not always true. You might do what you love, and we've seen that a lot in history, right? Where, you know, artists and people of that nature, they've always done their work, been masterful at it, but some of them didn't make a lot of money. And so that's why he separates it out, because you don't want to box yourself in to say that that's the only thing that you're going to do. You can do multiple things, especially in today's day and age. You need multiple streams of income, you know, but those streams of income can feed your livelihood. So your finances can feed your livelihood, kind of like this podcast for me. You know, my livelihood pays for me being able to do this, right? I don't charge anybody for this, so I just do it. So, but my financial side, the things that I do for money, that pays for this. So, you know, I spend it, I invest it into that, because again, it's something that I love to do, and it's something I love to give back during that, in that way. Amy says, but not the root. Yes, no, it's not the root. It's not the root cause. So, you know, your body temperature, you got to be careful, because it's not the root cause, right? So, you know, it's treating things that's not really even, you know, gonna help you in the long run. Okay. Angela Blackberry Streeter is joining and says, yes, and it's so true. What goes in your, whether spiritual or physical, that's what shows on the outside. Exactly. You know, and it's so, and I always tell people this, and Kyle's joining in. What's up, brother? Good to see you. Kyle's joining in, and Angela Blackberry Streeter, that's so true. And I always tell people this, you know, when you know, me wanting to be healthy, it's not for a look. The look comes naturally, just because you're being healthy. So your body's gonna be its natural best form as you become healthy. But I'm not trying to, you know, and people do that. I mean, you know, if that's what you do, that's what you do. But, you know, I'm not trying to be a bodybuilder. I'm not trying to be a sculptor. I'm not trying to sculpt my body in the vision of anything else. I just want to be healthy. And as I'm healthy, then my body will naturally be what it is. And then as long as, and this is really the key for me, as long as I'm able to live and enjoy my life and express myself to the full potential of my higher self, then I'm healthy. That's health to me. And I'm happy with that, you know. I'm extremely grateful for that, you know, and it's so amazing. And I see so many people, I meet so many people in so many walks of life, and it's very inspiring to see anyone that knows and understands that it's not how you look, and it's not, you know, what you lack. It's what you do, right? It's what you do. That's what it's all about. All the other stuff, you know, I had someone ask me, tell me basically that, you know, they felt comfortable around me because I didn't bring a lot of attention to some of the things that they, you know, were very self-conscious about. And I said to them, I said, well, why would I? I mean, it's when you think and you live a certain way, you don't even see things the same way. Like, it's not even, that is not even on your radar. I'm not worried about that. That's not, I'm really looking at energy. That if your energy is good, then we good. You know, that's, I mean, the rest of it is, it's so relative. Like, it's so second stage. Let's just put it like that. It's so second stage. Like, it's not even really something that you really want to consider. You know, it's at that point you just kind of, I mean, you live, you be, and you're interacting with so many different people, and that's what matters. You know, I was out in California, and you know, a lot of people would come to me and say that, and say, you know, how I helped someone in that way. And I would a lot of times I would be oblivious to that because I was just being me. But you don't really know how things impact people until they tell you. Like, and so when they come and tell me, I'm like, wow, I didn't really know that, but thank you for letting me know, because I'm grateful to be able to impact anybody in a positive way. I appreciate it. You know, the opportunity. That's life working through me. So that's life working through me, and I just allow it to happen. And so that's 5 and 6. So your livelihood can be what you love to do, and then your finances can be things that just help feed your livelihood, right? Whether that's, you know, creating, whether it's, you know, helping, assisting, and other walks of life things, you know. I mean, it can be anything you love to do. You know, making music, you know, just whatever. So that's 5 and 6. 7 is beliefs, right? And we talked about this. You know, once you get to a certain point, you got to do a check. It's just like everything else in your life. You got to do a check on your beliefs, because some beliefs don't really move to the next stage of consciousness with you. Right? I'll give you an example. If you believe that somebody's out to get you, then are you really trusting in the universe? Are you really trusting in, the grand design of things? Are you? When you look back into history and you see those, and I spoke about this, and you see those people who actually went through some type of persecution because of the things that they believed, the mindset that they were bringing to the current paradigm of existence at that particular time, and how they were shaking that up, and people didn't like that, right? And they would always threaten them and so on and so forth. And so, but in all of those stories, you would hear that they completed whatever they came to do before anything, if anything ever happened to them, right? So what does that tell you? So if you really truly put your trust into the protection and the love and the peace of what is greater than all, right, then that's what you have, and that's what it is. So your beliefs, you have to start looking at your beliefs and looking at the things that no longer serve you. They talk about this in mental health communities and stuff like that. The things that don't serve you, you got to let them go. So that's definitely something to think about. And he helps you with that in his program. But it's one of the 8 life structures that you definitely want to keep your eyes on. And the 8th and the last, and then we're going to get into what today's topic is about, because it's going to be short, but that's because of a very famous thought that once things reach higher dimensions, higher consciousness, they actually become simpler. But we're going to get into that in a second. So the 8th structure that you're going to want to take a look at is community. That's when you start looking at your community and people around you and start building that, and it helps you to have that focus. Because again, remember, you becoming your higher self helps everyone else as well. So therefore, community. So now it's, okay, what are my gifts? What is emerging from me that I can bring to others to raise the collective vibration? Okay, and that's where we're going with this, and we chose that for a reason. Okay, so those are the 8 structures. So I'm gonna go back over them real quickly. Spiritual, ego, relationships, the body temple, livelihood, finances, beliefs, community. Okay, those are the 8 life structures. And anything in your life, you can pretty much fit into those 8 structures. So that's what's very, very powerful about that. It's a very good way of keeping all of that organized. Okay, so on to today's topic, the 4th state of consciousness. Right? What comes after challenge? What comes after understanding that life is happening through me? What's after that? It's the being state of consciousness. The being state of consciousness. So once you understand that life is happening through you, and again, remember that little fine line, that subtle line that separates. And I'm gonna show you where that illusion is, okay? Because we say it's happening through us, meaning it's still separate from it. It's something else that's coming through us when you say that. So that's the fine line, that subtle line that's still separating you from the truth, which is that life is happening as you, meaning you are life. You are that life. You are that source. There's a very interesting organism that lives on this planet. And it's so funny because until I think recently, we didn't even really know that it was one organism. We thought that it was many organisms, which was a forest. And then they come to find out that all of these trees in this forest that stretched for miles had the same root system, meaning it was one plant. It was one big tree, one big life. So in that is the spiritual lesson. We know, we're all connected. And we're all connected from the source. So if you can imagine a point of light, and then you can imagine rays of light coming from that point of light, then you kind of understand what you are. Because you are an extension of the source of all. So being that we're connected in that way, we are beings. That is what the state of being is. When you are being, when I say I am being, that means that life, my awareness of life is of myself, meaning I'm aware that I'm here. I'm aware that you are a part of me. Once you reach that level, all of those 8 structures fall into line. Because, and I'm just going to use part 8, structure 8 as an example, community. When you understand that you're all connected, when you understand that you're connected with everybody around you, everybody you see, everybody you meet, everybody on this planet, do you want to hurt yourself? Would you want to hurt somebody knowing that it's a part of you? So when you understand that, it brings you to a totally different understanding of this universe, which includes any and everything, not even just the people, but the animals, the material, everything. So the being state of consciousness. So you go from understanding life is happening through you to life is happening as me. I am life. I am love. I am light. I am peace. And then you start to embody the qualities of life. And then you embody that. Some people, they choose, when they get to that state, they choose to devote themselves, because this is a very important concept. I was talking with a friend of mine about this earlier today. It doesn't mean that you withdraw. It actually means that you open up and you become more. So more can happen through you, right? So as that happens, you go out into the world and affect the world in the way that your divine purpose has always planned for you to do, right? Being that you are a part of the divine purpose. Being that you are a part of the divine. So understanding that, you go out into the world and that's what you do in whatever way that it is meant for you to do that. And that doesn't mean that somebody's choosing it for you, quote unquote. You're choosing it for yourself. Because again, remember, when you reach that, the way that you think about everything that surrounds that, you have to question it. You have to think, well, I can't think like this anymore because my understanding is this now. So when I understand that, I can't even say the same things anymore, because it changes the way that I'm interacting with myself. So as I start to understand that, as I embody that love and I embody that light and that peace, that is the energy that I push out, and that is what we feel as a collective. So when people start talking about, raising the collective consciousness, right? that's what they're talking about. Like you're part of life becoming more. He also put out a Instagram story a few days ago, actually, and he was talking about how the earth is part of that life, right? Because earth supports life, and anything that supports life is of life. Okay, so its vibration is rising as well. So if you're out of sync with the natural flow of vibration being raised, then you're gonna feel off. It makes you feel off. You feel like, man, I don't feel right. Something's not right, right? You feel off because you're not aligned with that vibration. You're not becoming your higher self at the pace that life wants itself to become. So therefore you feel antsy. You feel the need to, I saw another post where somebody was talking about it. It's like, if you're feeling like you want to move somewhere, then that's something, but that it could very well manifest itself that way. And say, well, it might be you going to a different place to affect a different set of people, but it's all connected. It's all the same. I'm going to stay away from saying certain words because I don't want to confuse the point, but you have to understand that this is a collective. It's a collective. It's a collective project. And when I say collective, I'm not just talking about the state, country. I'm talking about life. I'm talking about the universe. I'm talking about everywhere. It's a collective project of raising consciousness to its next unfoldment of infinity. So when you understand, and don't understand, but when you start to contemplate what is infinity, and you start to understand that it's never ending, then you know that it's always going to be unfolding. Always. So when, it's so funny because when I used to talk to people and I tell people, hey, like my vision of the future is something different. Like I look at things, I'm researching things and I'm looking at things like, and I'm going to throw it out here right now, but what people don't, some people might not know about this, some people might, but there's something that's called a Dyson sphere. And this Dyson sphere is a structure. It's a mega structure that's believed to be used by advanced civilizations. And the way that they use it is they build the structure around a star and they harvest the energy from that star perpetually for the life of that star. Being that they can harvest the energy from this star, they are able to make fantastic technology that looks like magic and this is a scientific theory. This is not, I'm not talking from a fantasy book right now. This is a scientific theory. So I encourage you to go and read about it, but it's very interesting because when you think about that and you think to yourself and you say, what does that mean? That means that when you get to a point, you no longer want to affect anything around you in a negative way, even though you understand that you are connected to it, right? You understand that you're connected to it. You don't even want to use it in a way that's not beneficial to life, right? So therefore, moving towards an energy source that's perpetual, that's what it is, a star, it pushes out energy. That's how the earth is sustained. So being that that's what it's for, you're utilizing what it's for what it is, and therefore it is all in alignment with life. So, but I'm not going to get too deep into that because again, that's on the level of, and this is science talking, on the level of civilizations, we're at a zero compared to that, and that's like, I think like the third level of civilization. They developed the technology to do that in their rendition of that. So it's interesting, but it's so much out here that we can be doing. as beings of infinite potential, we can be becoming that and solving a lot of these self-made problems that we have made for ourselves, and moving on to another level of consciousness collectively. Another thing I always used to use as an example, because it's a good example, and it's from the mind of someone who was thinking on a level like that, right? Where like Star Trek, right? And everybody's like, oh, it's kind of geeky, it's kind of blah 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 blah, but it's philosophical. You got to think about it from a philosophical standpoint. And I'm not talking about it, I'm not trying to get too deep into it, but just the thought of a civilization coming together and all working towards the greater good. All working towards the greater good. That civilization didn't even have currency, because your contribution to the civilization was your currency. Meaning it changed the whole concept of value, and also there was technology where you could pretty much create anything from any type of material, so you had that too, but again, when you start to understand these types of things and you start looking at the world and you're saying, wow, okay, this is the potential. Like and that's just something that you can imagine. Think about the things that you can't imagine. Think about the things that is so far-fetched that nobody has thought about it yet. That's exciting, because that means that there could be some really great stuff on the horizon and people just don't know yet. And that's good. That's a good thing. So, I always want to encourage people to always work on yourself, and always understand that when they say, you're a work in progress, that's true. You're always going to be constantly elevating yourself to the next level. You're always constantly going to be challenged. And not challenged in the fact that you have to be challenged, but it's going to be challenged because you are challenging yourself to shift outside of your own paradigm of understanding into a higher level of understanding. And with that is going to come, recalibration. You got to recalibrate everything, because again, you're using a lot of these physical faculties to do this, so even if your spiritual journey may be going, then everything else will follow suit in its own time, just as a flower unfolds in its own time. So thank you all for joining me. Thank you for, if you listen to all of these episodes in this 4-part series, thank you so much for listening. And now I'm going to reveal the spiritual teacher. The spiritual teacher that I've been talking about, his name is Michael Beckman. And you can find him on Instagram. You can find him on all the social media platforms. But he's a pastor out at the Agape Spiritual Center out in Los Angeles. And, he's been doing this for a long time, and it's non-denominational. So if you want to go and check it out, please do. He was able to facilitate a meeting between the Dalai Lama and some other thought leaders here in the U.S. and so on and so forth. He's done some amazing things in his life, and definitely, things that I myself feel and resonate with, that I want to, through in what I'm doing right now, want to bring, these messages to people and help elevate people, and it's a beautiful thing. So definitely please go and check them out. Go research. I always tell people, go and research this stuff yourself so that you can understand from your understanding. And as always, thank you for supporting, and thank you for joining me. And please come back next week, same time, for the next episode. Might have something special for you. So just stay tuned and I'll let you know. But until then, peace, love, light, and I'll see you on the